range of colors. So you can always push the colors of the shadows a little bit more, or in general. In general, the local color is also a little bit more yellowish than for a person with light skin. I use a Venetian red, which is a very potent color, and I use it a little bit more than what I would use for light skins. So in general, the colors are the same. You just have to make sure that the local color that you're using is not within the lightest range, but is more within the dark range. But basically, just by understanding how the values work together, you can get a very realistic impression of the darkest skin. Depending on the light source and depending on the parts of the body, you will have to shift this local color more towards red or more towards orange, or you will probably need to shift this local color more towards yellow or even green under certain types of light. So the light source might have a bigger influence on the color of the skin than the actual ethnicity of the person. If you want to learn more about oil painting, you can check out my practical guide to oil painting techniques and materials, which is a complete course in oil painting, starting from the very basic elements that everyone needs to know for painting, going all the way to the most advanced techniques. So if you're a beginner, don't know where to start, or if you already know some things and want to expand your knowledge, you can check out this video by clicking the links in the description box.
That I will pay any artist who works on Eye Patch Wolves. There's a minimum amount that I will pay every artist, and multiple times artists will quote me something and I'll be like, I can't actually pay you that because that is below the minimum standard rate for Eye Patch Wolves. And sometimes that leads to their quote like quadrupling or like, you know, tripling or whatever. And I'm happy to do that because I'm happy to pay talented artists, you know? I don't know if you guys saw no, actually, I don't want to say which t-shirt because I genuinely don't want to. I don't think it's fair for me to talk about like an artist's behind the scenes shit. But we had a t-shirt on the previous run, and like the t-shirt's a fucking incredible t-shirt, and the artist quoted me so low, and I was like, Jesus Christ, dude, no. And I asked them, please don't ever quote anyone this low yourself, you know. Now that's not to say that we meet every commission we get. Occasionally on Eye Patch Wolves, like I'll approach an artist and like, you know, this artist is just turns out like at the top of their field and they're working with like Nike and Adidas or whatever, and so they'll quote me a payment that like I just can't meet. Like I had an artist quote me $4,000 for a piece once, and no shade at all to that artist. Get fucking paid, buddy. It just wasn't like that wasn't a commission that I could hit with, you know, with the money we make from Eye Patch Wolves. But I still think fair play to that person, you know. But then, like, you know, I'm also working on 2 other projects that are currently undisclosed, and one of those projects I am taking like a massive amount of my own money and just spreading it among a pool of artists because I want them to get paid. I want them to see benefit from it. And then the other is just like we are hiring an artist that I'm fucking so psyched to work with and making sure they get paid and getting sure they get paid fair, you know? So like when I talk about AI art and the importance of like artists getting paid and the importance of artists being able to live, like I hope it's clear that's a walk I walk and not something I just say. Like that's something I really fucking believe in. Like there's this is, and I hate it. It's like the most cynical response. There's like all these people being like, oh, when's the last time you commissioned an artist? And for me, that answer is like, I'm commissioning one right fucking now. More like asking for ketchup on your steak. The stalk moth, that's a really good point. Eye Patch Wolves has literally helped foster my skills and as a digital artist, giving myself challenges to meet with thematic limits to test them. Ampersand, thank you so much. Yeah, like, and it's tricky because like right now, I actually did run into trouble with this a while ago. This was for, I wanted to do a competition, and I wanted to do a fake video games competition, and I was like, okay, here's the theme, and I gave people a theme for a fake video game, and I said, go nuts guys, and the winner gets like $700, and like there was definitely people like excited about it, but I had actually a couple of artists be like, I don't know about this dude. And in fairness, like 99% of the people who like were kind of calling me out on this were doing so in like the chillest, most respectful way. They were like, listen dude, I think you should read this article. And it turns out what they were talking about is spec work. And the idea of spec work is basically a company says, hey, we're having a contest to design our new logo. The winner gets like X amount of money. And the problem with spec work is that what happens then is a bunch of artists go off and does work, and they don't know that they're going to be paid for it. You know, and when people pointed out that, I was like, oh, fuck. This is exactly like what I'm doing. Oh, it's not exactly, but it's way too similar. And so I immediately shut down the competition. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. This is not what I'm about. And I'm actually going to try, I'm going to put out a call next week to just be like, you know, ask artists, is there a way we can do basically a fake video game jam and have it be legitimate, have it be something cool and interesting? And I actually had some artists saying the way that you do that is there's no prize. People just can compete for the joy of competing and nothing else. I feel weird about that as well, because I want artists to get paid, you know, like that doesn't sit right with me either. So I still need to think about that. Oh my god, I want a fake video game jam. And look, yeah, I know I want it too, and we're gonna try and do something, because I just think it'd be so fucking cool. But I need to do it in a way that is fair to artists. And like, if I need to put like significant money into it, like if I need to put a couple of grand into it, I will. I genuinely will. I have no problem doing that. But how do I do that in a way that's fair? Like, how do I do that in a way that ensure people don't feel their time is getting wasted? And I know VadiVidia does it, and I maybe need to track down VadiVidia and talk to him about it. But yeah, we'll see. I just want to talk about a game jam hat. I think it's fine as long as there's no prize, that's expectation in, and that people doing the game jam are aware of that. Yeah, it's just that idea seems counterintuitive to me at first, but I do understand that like part of the problem with spec work is the ambiguous expectation, and part of the problem is like, and by eliminating a prize, you basically just make it something that people can do because they want to. But I still need to think about it. I still really need to think about it. Don't use the art after. But then... But like the whole point of the game jam is I literally want to be like, look at this fucking cool ass fake video game and look at this amazing artist that made it, you know? So that would kind of defeat the purpose a little bit. Sounds like what you want to make is like a zine. Yeah, but I would also want to put it in like a video, you know? Oh, shit. Nonsensed... thanks to your fake video games video, I've managed to start a small group with my friends where we make fake video games. Nonsensed, please send me your fake video games. I really want to see more fake video games. And I, like, spoiler, I want to do another fake video games. You can email them to regular_eyepatchwolf@gmail.com. Just use subject line fake video games. And anyone who happens to be watching, if you have made a fake video game or are making fake video games, for the love of God, send them to me. Okay, that is if like you want me to like show them off or whatever. If not, don't worry about it. But I love fake video games, and I want to be a part of making fake video games like more of a thing. So please send me your shit. Maybe you could partner up with another platform and the award be like access to that platform. Like, for example, a platform that offers video game courses. Maybe. See, like, I'm skeptical to get into anything that's not actually paying people, you know? Lizzie B, I make fake video games, but only because I don't have the ability to make them real. I mean, that's what's fucking awesome about them, though, you know? That's so cool. Lizzie B, please send me your shit. Please do. I think any prize runs the issue of some people getting rewarded for their work and others not. Yeah, you see, that's the problem. Pay a minimum amount to everyone who submits that meets a certain criteria, and then the winner gets a prize. See, the problem there is, even though you've worded it very thoughtfully, and like I kind of hit that point myself as well, that's also a competition. You know, like what you've just said is a competition, so it's really fucking tricky. But anyway, look, I'm gonna put a call out about this on Blue Sky next week, so if people want to continue the discussion there, because I feel like we could kind of just keep going around about it. Why not do it for charity? Okay, that's everything that's going on inside me, chat.
Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and this is quite possibly going to be the Who Asked of videos, because I'm not sure anyone really cares at this point for me to talk about Diablo 4, but gonna go ahead and do it anyway. I did go ahead and play the new Season 8 Diablo 4, just so that you wouldn't have to, and giving you a bit of the lowdown on what's going on. So I played it for a whole day before, like just as it came out, played it for a whole day before going ahead and checking some of the community sentiment, and what I thought was just, as per usual, kind of an aggressively okay experience. Everyone turned out to just hate it, and I had no idea that it was as bad as it was, apparently. And I think a large part of that is stemming from the fact that the usual crowd that has been basically choking down the Diablo 4 season after season, has finally caught up with the rest of us and gotten a bit fed up with the usual cycle where nothing particularly exciting happens. For me, this season was just a bit more Diablo 4. It was like, yep, log in, do an extra mechanic, get some extra borrowed powers, which were kind of fun. I thought those powers are kind of fun. The mechanic or the event was pretty much nothing. And then there's a little bit of balance changes, a bit of quality of life, all of that. So it was basically just a D4 season, right? Like, you know what to expect, you know what to get. For a lot of other people, they seem to, for some reason, still expect more. And once there was a bit of a rug pull, I suppose, on the Battle Pass, which was a big point of contention, that's when everyone was like, yo, hold up. This D4 thing isn't going as well as we thought. So it seems like everyone's kind of upset that the mechanic is pretty stale, which is, I think, pretty usual, thing for D4 season to do. But then, most importantly, apparently, I had no idea that Battle Pass was so fucking important. The Battle Pass is just less than it usually was. Like, you get a bit less cosmetics or a bit less points or something. I don't fucking know. I don't look at the Battle Pass, and I still haven't, basically, up to this point. And it's a bit of a confusing rework. Like, I looked at it, and I don't really know what the hell it wants from me. But anyway, that's kind of where a lot of the anger came from. Because I guess we're just, not getting that much in season per season. And then at the same time, a lot of people like doing their Battle Pass, and it's like kind of like challenge, league sort of thing, where you're just ticking off boxes, and then this one's like worse than usual. So pretty angry stuff. So the community sentiment was not good. I think in general, just to go over the entire game at this point and how things fit, it's still just an okay ARPG to get into for the first time. Like, if you're getting into it for the very first time, not too bad, right? You'll have a bit of fun. You'll explore some classes. You'll have some fun with skills and some fucking aesthetics and bosses and whatever. It'll be okay. The big problem with D4, and I guess a lot of ARPGs at the moment in our pretty plentiful landscape of ARPGs, is the replayability, coming back, the reason to come back, and how it feels coming back. And it does feel pretty lackluster. Like, coming back, you don't really get much out of it. You've already kind of gone through the motions, and you're just going through the motions again. And I feel like that's kind of a problem with a lot of them. And of course, PoE1, our king, does it better than the rest at the moment, because when you come back, you are coming back for reasons. There's like a whole new system to check out, mechanic. There's usually pretty big changes, or at least, historically. Of course, we're not doing so well in the past year, but historically, that's been reasons to come back to PoE1. And it just feels good to come back with pretty much every other game. And we're even talking about, very recently, just PoE2 coming back out with small updates here or there. It doesn't have huge reasons to come back. But of course, I think there's going to be bigger updates and, the full release and everything. And I think it's on track for doing things the right way. But last epoch, you're talking D4, you're talking PoE2. Like, reasons to come back need to exist, and D4 is lacking those in spades, it seems. Most people, like I said, were pretty happy to just log in and go ahead and do their new little power and stuff. But once it really started to feel lackluster, 8 seasons in, then it just kind of, I guess, opened their eyes to the reality that this is Diablo 4. And it just surprised me how angry everyone was about this, because I got what I expected, which is not too much. I'm like, okay, going in, not expecting too much. Yep, got that. Bit of fun. Played it for 3 days. I thought that if everyone's going to be mad, the time for doing that would have been the expansion, because that's when there's like a big opportunity for system reworks and that type of shit. Whereas the seasons are just par for the course. They give you a bit of a new power. They give you an extra little new thing to do. But then otherwise, there's just some balance sometimes. Maybe a few new uniques. And that's just how it's been. But all of a sudden, yep, it is apparently an issue. So to talk about the actual game a bit, the season and stuff, it is a bit lackluster, just the way it is done, I suppose. Belial is Lord of Lies, coming back from Act 2 of Diablo 3, and the end fight that you do with him is almost one for one the same from Diablo 3. They've added like a mechanic or two, but otherwise big same boss and arena and stuff. That's just the big payoff. To get there, on the way there, the actual season mechanic, you are basically doing a reskinned Legion event, which is like something that pops up on the map every fucking 5 to 10 minutes, and you go in and you do just a copy paste, repeat few encounters, and then just like a small boss fight at the end of it. And that it is very copy paste. It has like a couple of lines of dialogue that you just repeatedly hear every time, and you pretty much just know what you're going to get over and over and over again. You got to do this rep grind to get to some extra rewards, but you can kind of skip that rep grind and just get it from doing boss fights, and then the season mechanic essentially doesn't exist. So there is that, but the boss powers that come with it, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. They're kind of fun. You steal like kind of a skill or boss power based around many different bosses that you kill, and they're kind of neat. Some of them are pretty powerful, some of them very powerful, and they can change your build a little bit, so they're not too bad. It's more borrowed power, as this game has continuously done. You are going to get this and feel more powerful, and then it's kind of pretty much gone, and you just get a different one next season. So there's not too much continuity in that. Aside from that, what else do we need to say? Some of the boss fights did get a bit reworked, so they added a few mechanics to just make them dumber bullet hells, where you got to like really focus and just dodge everything once again, or just build a character to be able to tank most of that. And they also made it so most boss fights you can't really like skip through phases. So if you got enough damage, you can't just be like 100-0. You instead are kind of like forced to do its add phase, forced to do its like extra attack phase, whatever the fuck. And that has made Uber Lilith once again worse, which is just hilarious. It's like 8 seasons in a row almost where just Uber Lilith, one of like a lot of people's least favorite ARPG boss fight, just got worse again, because you are forced to do these mechanics, and just it opens your eyes to how not fun some of the mechanics in boss fights are. And Lilith is one, and Endariel is another, because that is just a clusterfuck of a fight, and it's so like annoying to actually do, and it's kind of just infuriating that it's to the point of just like laughable. You go insane going, ha ha ha, how the fuck am I doing this right now? Why is this my time? Anyway, so you are forced to do some bosses like that more than before. And the torment scaling got changed a bit, and the leveling got changed a bit. So the leveling got changed to the point where it's supposed to be a bit slower, and you find a bit less loot, so there's a bit more, like meaningful kind of progression. I personally didn't fucking notice it at all. Like, it felt like I got to max level and then started Paragon grinding the same as usual. Maybe it was a bit slower, sure. Didn't really impact me at all, so that's fine. And the torment scaling, like, they made it so it's a bit more apparent, and I don't know, it's kind of weird. It is what it is. It's Diablo 3, it's Diablo 4, big numbers, big health scaling and all that, but going from like a tier, it goes from Torment 1 to Torment 4, going from like a Torment 2 boss fight, like I was doing Belial Torment 2, and I was pretty much, killing him in like 5 seconds, and then I tried out Torment 3, because I'm like, obviously I'm too strong for Torment 2, and it would have taken me like 10 minutes to do. It felt like a health gap of about 50 times. So then Torment 4 is a health gap from Torment 2 to Torment 4 of like 1,000 times, you would think. But the crazy thing is, after just working on my gear and my character and making some upgrades, after like 3 hours, I was back to 5-second killing Torment 3 Belial. So it still makes sense for the game, but it's just weird and wacky how big the health scaling, the damage scaling in this game really is. And it is what it is. Yes, it's kind of fun to like upgrade, and kind of fun to just constantly chase that next little min-max and dopamine for your character, but it becomes pretty shallow when you're doing it season after season for the same sort of shit, because it doesn't feel particularly good, at least not to me. And then the meta doesn't change too often. Like, they, for the most part, haven't really shaped it or shook it up too much. All expansion except for just like killing off Spiritborn. So Spiritborn came along in the expansion, and it was just the dumbest thing pretty much any ARPG has ever seen. And then it's gone. Basically, it got nerfed to oblivion, and it's fine at this point. More balanced. Let's just call it. Meanwhile, most other things haven't really been shaken up too much, and they're just you know what to expect, and you play a class that you want to play, and you know what you're going to get out of it. You make the build that they want you to make, and then there's not too much real decision making there, except for combining a couple of legendary powers. But it's a pretty solved meta. So where does that leave us? Probably me trying it again in another 6 months and having another couple of days of fun, which is, for me, all I can really ask from D4. Because if you just take it for what it is, ignore it for a while, see some of the updates come through, and then give it a shot and actually commit your time for a few days, you'll have fun for those few days, and then you'll stop, and then that's all there is to it. If you come back every single update and you're hoping that you're going to have a great blasty time every single time, I don't know, it's going to feel pretty shallow, and I think that's where you're going to end up getting a bit too frustrated with the game, and then have to just leave for a long time, or just leave for forever and look to greener pastures. So with that, that's my kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't really call it a review, but the TLDR, it feels kind of on par to me with the Last Epoch. I think Last Epoch is a better game, but I can have a similar amount of fun in D4. I've probably played both games about the same amount of time at this point, and they do have a kind of similar feel to some extent for the kind of dopamine rewards you get quickly and powerfully. But then I think overall Last Epoch's a better game. It just needs still a lot more of everything that it's got, which will take time. So they're making good steps, and of course, it'll just take time. But I do think that they're on par for me for how quick I can get into it and put it down, that sort of thing. While I still do rate PoE 1 and PoE 2, if you're gonna go down that route, I rate them much higher than all these other games still. And I'll get back to PoE 2 soon. Probably just doing one more Last Epoch build so that I don't feel bad about wasting some of the gear I've got, and then we'll get back to playing some PoE 2, trying out the loot, and enjoying what that game has to offer thus far in its pretty infant state. So there it is. If you've never played D4 before in your life, I think you'll get a few weeks enjoyment out of it. If you've played plenty, coming back to a new season like this one isn't going to feel amazing. You can maybe get something out of it, but take it for what it is. Some game that you play a little bit every now and again, and just move on. So thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.
Today we're going to talk about my favorite art books of 2024. Yeah, 2024. These are not necessarily books that I've bought this year, although most of them are. They're just books that I've used the most throughout the past 12 months. So I always have like an art book on my desk within arm's reach at all times. So whenever I'm bored, I just reach over and I check it out and flip through the pages. And these are books that have been the most used in my rotating cast of art books. There's a wide variety in here, and one of them isn't even an art book per se, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. As always, there are links below to all the art books that are mentioned in this video, so you can go check it out for yourself, and they do make great gifts for the holidays. So without further ado, let's get into the first book, Aftermarket. So Aftermarket is a Kickstarter book that was released middle of this year. I backed this on Kickstarter about maybe a year ago, I think. And it is a book by Brian Sum, who is a concept artist. Brian Sum is a concept artist who formerly worked at BioWare and is responsible for some of the designs on Anthem and maybe Mass Effect Andromeda. I'm not entirely sure. So the story behind Aftermarket, the premise is that it is sort of like a catalog for aftermarket parts for modifying, I suppose, your body. And so in here, there's collections of body modification, different types of cybernetic body parts, and also vehicles, items, things like that. It's essentially structured as a sort of like a shopping catalog for all your cybernetic needs. It's a really good sized book too. I really like books that are slightly smaller. There's a lot to be said about having an art book that is on the more compact side because, well, the tendency to, when it comes to making art books, is to print them as large as possible because, well, you want to naturally show off the artwork. But it can become a little bit cumbersome and also kind of hard to use because it's just too big and clumsy, and it just makes the experience of flipping through an art book quite unpleasant. I think there's a nice compromise to be made between, you know, something that is extremely large and something that's very small. Although I do love my tiny books, I really love the layout of this book. I think it's an interesting format because art books tend to be quite long horizontally. I'm just a sucker for very simple, straightforward formats. There's also a tutorial or process section at the end here where he talks about and gives you a step-by-step look as to how these drawings are made. These tutorial or process sections are always an appreciated addition to an art book because it gives me an insight into the process of the artist, especially for me because as someone who's been doing it this long, you sort of fall into this process where it's like familiar to you. But seeing how Brian does it and especially other artists who also have tutorial sections in their book just goes to show you how differently people do it. And seeing that, it is very insightful and also quite surprising the way he, for example, adds shadows and lighting to his art. All in all, an excellent book. I will say that quite a bit of this work has already been published and is publicly available on, you know, Brian's social media, and if you just like search up his name on, I don't know, Pinterest or something, you can find a lot of this artwork in here. Having said that, it is still very nice to have it in large printed format because, you know, it's just really nice to have something physical like that and also easily accessible. But that's just something that I would like to point out. Aftermarket. So the next book I have here is Cannabis Works 2 by Tatsuyuki Tanaka. It's nothing to do with cannabis. Tatsuyuki Tanaka also goes by the pseudonym of Cannabis. Now he's most famous for being an animator on Akira, and he's been around the block. He's animated or worked on a bunch of Otomo stuff like a Pharaoh to Arms, Short Piece, and Gantz. There is of course a Cannabis Works 1. I don't have it with me because, you know, I've always had access to that book, whether it be in the bookshelves of studio or office or at the library, so I've never really had an impetus to buy the book for myself. But I did come across this one at an art bookstore, and it was an impulse buy. It's not really an impulse buy because I knew what I was getting into, and it certainly delivered on its promise. Now, Tatsuyuki Tanaka, as I've said, has worked on many such legendary projects, and you can see the influence he's had on the projects and the projects have had on him through his artwork. I'm really a big fan of, this is a bit of a tangent, but I'm really a big fan of buying art books made by a single artist. You know what I mean? Aftermarket being another example of that. Meaning it's not just a compilation of different artists like you would see on, example, an art of book, where, you know, many different artists have worked on the project and have contributed therefore to the art book. I find that buying a book by a single artist, there's just a lot more depth to the content. You get to see how the artist's style and process have changed across time and across projects. And also it goes to show you the range of Tatsuyuki Tanaka. He's gone from doing full colored illustrations to storyboards to concept design and layouts and character design sheets. Someone of his caliber is incredibly versatile, and you can definitely see that in this book. Now, of course, being someone who has worked on a lot of the Otomo stuff, if you're a fan of any of Otomo's work, well, this is kind of like an auxiliary art book in the sense that a lot of this is kind of drawn in his style simply by the fact that he's working on these projects. There's incredibly delicate sensitivity to detail, especially when it comes to like hard surface stuff, like all these gears and pistons and pipes and cables are laid out in such a way that's so pleasing and with such deftness that isn't really apparent until, well, you try to do it for yourself. Then you realize what an expert Tanaka is. So if you're like me and you love these weird little mechs and pipes and cables and all this messy tech stuff and are a fan of old school anime, well, this is a book made for you. This is Memu 3 by James Jean, and it is a box of postcards. These postcards are a collection of his work since 2019. Now, each of these postcards are a single piece of art that's been done by him in that time period. And on the back of it, there's usually a corresponding sketch, usually done in pencil, which is really nice. I love seeing that. Again, more processed stuff. Now, it's not an art book per se, but it still is a collection of artwork. And it's really fun for me to just shuffle through this deck of cards, looking at all the beautiful art that's been made. Each and every one of these cards are unique, so there are no repeats, meaning there are 100 different pieces of art in here. And did I mention that this was Memu 3? So there are 2 other Memus, presumably with 100 cards each, which just sort of goes to show you his work rate and prolificness. It is kind of mind-blowing because none of these are like really sketches. They are all very finished, fully realized pieces of art. And to produce this amount of work in such a short time is really, really impressive, and it's so inspiring to me. Again, this being on the smaller side, it just encourages me to use it more often. And the more I look at it, well, the more inspired I get and the more motivated I get and the more work I want to make. Well, the question of whether this motivates me enough to actually draw is an entirely different matter, but it's there, it's really nice, and you know, I just like small books. I just don't like large tomes. It's an incredibly interesting format and one that I personally have never seen before. I mean, I know postcards are a thing, but to publish like your artwork in like this postcard format, it's a first time purchase for me. I will say that getting these cards back into the box is a little bit of a chore, so it is not really ideal in that regard, and also because these pages aren't numbered. If you like a piece of art in here, like one of these cards, and you want to find it again, well, good luck with that, because you're gonna have to shuffle through 100 different postcards to find the one that you are looking for. I think this also makes a great gift for not just artists but also non-artists, because I think it just has a lot more utility. I mean, you can also, you know, if you like, also take this out individually and frame it and use it as, you know, display art. All in all, I think it's a great gift, not just for artists, but also art enthusiasts. Alright, this one is a doozy. This is Anime Architecture by Stefan Rickos, who is the author and documentarian of this book. It is a collection of artwork done for legendary anime, a collection of legendary anime that we all love, such as Akira, the 2 Palabra movies, the original Ghost in the Shell, Innocence, Tekken Concrete, and the Evangelion movies. There's so much stuff in here that I don't even know where to start. Now, this is not a new book, but I thought I would just show it to you because it's been on my rotation for the last couple of years, really, not just this year. I was working on a project for the last couple of years, and throughout those 2 years, this book has been my Bible. It is like the ultimate reference for sci-fi architecture and like tech stuff, and also painting in the old school anime style. The book features a collection of art done for these movies. A lot of them are scans of the background paintings for these anime, usually done in poster paint. I really love seeing the sort of like unfinished edges of these paintings where you can tell where the paint ends and the paper starts, because, well, these are images made for function. They're made as backgrounds for the anime, and if it's not being shown on the screen, well, they're not painting it. But as a result, you get to see the process of how this is made and how this paint is probably isomized, being layered on and painted. You can really see how they layer on the wet washes and then layering it on top with more opaque paint. Aside from the paintings, there are also these incredible pencil drawings done for either the background layout or concept art for these films. And well, these again are done in pencil, and it's quite incredible because, well, you know, we all know how difficult that is. And to see the precision of line work and the sheer density of detail, especially in the ones on Metropolis and Tecon King Creed, to see that all done in either pen or pencil on paper is quite mind-blowing, and it just gives me a newfound sense of respect for the artists who have worked on these films. On top of that, there's also a bunch of stuff in here that gives really good insight into the animation process, especially for animation of that era. You can really see the step-by-step process where they do concept art and then layouts and then background paintings, and even, you know, some of the references that the directors have collected just for, you know, the films. Now, of course, I am referring to Hideaki Anno and his pictures of Tokyo, just cables and buildings and electrical boxes and just, you know, stuff, where it's used as really valuable reference for the making of his movies. What strikes me as interesting is just how colorful Akira is. I never really realized it, but Akira is so saturated and so poppy in their colors. Like, you don't really notice it while you're watching the movie, but just looking at these paintings, you can really see how saturated some of these colors are. And you compare that to paintings for Pat Labor or Ghost in the Shell, you can really see how monochromatic and toned down these paintings are compared to the ones in Akira. It's just really interesting because I never really thought about these two things as being very different. I always just assumed that, oh, you know, there's like a vintage or old school anime style, and I didn't really make a distinction between the two. But looking at these side by side, you can really see the intricate differences between all these movies and how just a slight shift in style or tone and color can create such a distinctive look. So if you're a fan of that and you want to see more amazing work, Anime Architecture, it's a great book. Go pick it up. So this next book might not be for all of you. This book is really for level 50 design nerds, people who really are crazy about design. This is Elements of Design by Gail Greet Hanna, and it's based on the teachings of Rowena Reed Costello. This book covers the teachings of Miss Costello, and it's called The Elements of Design because it touches on the very fundamental basics of design, especially when it comes to three-dimensional design and spatial design. It goes through what I presume is the curriculum for her class. It starts off with teaching you how to develop a sensitivity to form and proportion and weight, and it moves you on to more complicated subjects. Now, when I say this is not for everyone, I truly do mean it, because it's not really like a how to draw book. It is, however, prescriptive in what you should do and how to think about stuff. The book is structured through a series of exercises that you do. Now, this book is really old school. It asks of you to do it in like plaster and clay, but I don't have access to all this, so I resorted to doing them in Blender, which I think is fine. I think you do that in any 3D digital software. And it starts you through a series of exercises that involves arranging a bunch of shapes and forms and creating it in a very abstract manner. The goal of these exercises, as I've mentioned before, is to help you develop a sensitivity to balance and proportion and weight. So the main discipline that this book focuses on is three-dimensional design. So things like product design, industrial design, architecture and interior design. However, I do find that a lot of these principles, because of how basic they are, carry over to my line of work, which is concept art. I work in the fictional, where things aren't real and they all appear on screen, illustration, 2D art, 3D models. These are not things that are tangible per se, things that you can hold in your hand. But these principles are, to me, universally applicable, even when it comes to very 2D abstract graphic things like, well, you know, graphic design and layouting. This book at times can feel impenetrable and, dare I say, a little pretentious, but just approaching it with an open mind, there's so much here to learn. And even if you're not a fan of this, and even if you don't agree with it or think it's usable, I think it's just very interesting to understand a different point of view of how to approach design. Whether it's a philosophy you agree with is not really the point. It's just nice to expose yourself to different ways of thinking. So if you care about that kind of stuff, I think this is a really, really important read, and maybe, dare I say it, essential? In any case, you should check it out if that sounds interesting to you. I've saved the best for last. This is my favorite book of 2024. It's a new acquisition, relatively new. It's Tankhead by Emerson Tung and Tim Poppelier. Emerson Tung is the artist of this book, and Tim Poppelier is the writer of this book. So the premise of this book is an encyclopedia of war machines by different factions of a fantastical universe. Now, the world of this book is an alternate universe set in an alternate version of World War II. So there are lots of callbacks to the different factions of World War II, that being the Allies, the Japanese, and, well, Germany. The book is made by Emerson Tung, who is, I think at this current time, lead concept artist at id Studios. And he's worked on a bunch of stuff, Doom, obviously, Transformers, Warhammer. If you've ever searched the word robot or mech on Pinterest, there's a good chance that you've come across some of Emerson's work, especially work for and from Tankhead. Now, just like Aftermarket, this is a combination of years of work by Emerson, and it's finally made into and compiled into an art book. Now, I pre-ordered this when it was first announced, and I got this somewhere in the middle of 2024, like everyone else. I told you that I have a rotating cast of books that I swap in and out as I see fit, but this book has remained on my desk for the entirety of these last few months, just because of how good it is. And if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of mechs, and this just sort of tickles that itch, man. It's so good. The drawings on this book are mostly traditional. As far as I can tell, a lot of it is done, well, the lines at least are done in brush pen, and I think the colors are digital. So there's a really nice organic feel to these lines, even though the design of this mech and the perspective and everything, they're incredibly precise. But there's this really nice physical touch to these drawings. Now, what's really apparent to me is how much fun these designs are. These designs do not take themselves too seriously, and Emerson clearly was drawing them with his tongue fully stuck in his cheek. I love how each of these factions so clearly echo their real world counterpart. There's a really clear distinction between altered universe Japanese design and altered universe Allied design. He's clearly an incredibly proficient art director, and is really flexing those design language muscles here. So if you ever want to learn how to design things for different factions, where something from one faction looks very clearly different from something from another faction, this is a really, really great reference. There are mechs ranging from the smallest little tiny walker to large double spreads of giant battleships, giant crab mechs. So there's a huge amount of variety in here. And he clearly flexes that versatility in design ability. So it is also an incredibly thick book. This book is 231 pages long, and each of these pages have a piece of artwork on them done by one person. I also really like the section at the end here where he shows his sketches. I just really, again, I dig that, man. I dig it when artists show their rough, loose sketches. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I wish there were more of them here. There's only like maybe 5 spreads of sketches in here, and I really, really do wish there were more, because it's so interesting to me to see how these tiny thumbnails from a small idea evolve into, you know, a fully finished illustration. So yeah, if you're like me and you are just a huge mech nerd, this is not something that you want to miss out on. Tankhead, go check it out. So that's it for my favorite art books of 2024. Did you have any art books that were your favorite this year? Let me know in the comments down below. Who knows, I might check it out and you might see it in next year's video. Thank you for watching. Bye.
I'm trying to remember, there was a game that was like set in Age of Sigmar, and it was kind of like Kill Team, and it was like war Scream.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I have no memory of this place. Warcry.
Warcry.
Warcry. That's the one.
That's the one.
Warcry. The hell happened to Warcry?
Welcome to a bottom of the barrel video.
This is what happens when there's nothing to talk about, guys. we go to
We've
the
already made
dregs.
4 Tariff videos, so
Yeah.
So now we're talking about Warcry.
The news is kind of all in that realm right now.
And no, do you recall when that game came out?
Yeah, it was in 2019. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Because that'll be 6 years ago. And version 2 was 3 years after that.
No, I do. Yeah. So when the game came out, I was like, "This is cool." I thought the setting was pretty cool, and I remember unboxing the game and playing, like just getting the models built and playing, and figuring the game out inside of 30 minutes, and I was like, "Oh, cool!"
Yeah.
And the little boards and the terrain.
Yep.
And then I played a campaign of it, and I was like, "There's nothing here."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was like, "Oh," so it turned into a vehicle for cool crews. And then they like AOS, for match play reasons, they like made good war scrolls for the teams, so they saw play and life in that world, which was nice.
Yeah, they had like the compendium come out, and you could take like basically all the basic units in your army could like be used in Warcry essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess second it came out, and I honestly didn't have personal interest in playing the game.
And they kind of moved away. Second edition is when they kind of moved away from the whole chaos only thing
Right.
in terms of their like releases.
Which is probably smart.
Yeah.
So you can release more little teams of fun things, and there was a vehicle to deliver more of kind of like what Kill Team does. It's what it's supposed to do. So you got like Cities of Sigmar Wild Hunter guys, and new Sylvaneth models, and Ogre Gorgers. The problem is the game is not as deep as Kill Team.
No.
Not even in the slightest.
Yeah.
My dream was that it would have the Mordheim-esque thing to it with some sort of like... It's a little puzzling to me that we have in the books, in army books, you have Path to Glory, which I know people like. Because it's got like some depth. And that you have that and Warcry exists in the same world. It's bizarre to me. And then you have Underworlds as well, which is, I know, a different game. But you still have like little warbands. Okay, we have effectively 3 ways to play warbands in a game that is, a third as popular as 40K or whatever. It's very odd
that's
to me.
probably a really good thing to start with, like discussion wise, is can this game even exist? Like, and I don't mean like can they make it? I mean like can they sell it? Right? Like can enough people want it? And my initial reaction is like, just based on the people making those purchases of the Warcry models to begin with, very few people were buying Warcry models. Sorry, very few people were buying Warcry models to play Warcry. I'd say about half the sales I was making on Warcry kits were because the models are just a phenomenal,
Of course.
killer models.
Yes.
And the other half was because they're actually like usually pretty good units in Age of Sigmar,
Yeah.
right? And GW almost like, in order to make the game sell, pivoted to making cool, almost like what Kill Team does. Like, it's like, well, we're gonna make Striking Scorpions and like release them as a Kill Team.
Right.
It's like, well, people are gonna buy them for their other armies.
Right.
We're gonna release Chameleon Skinks and people are gonna buy them to play Seraphon. It's like, yeah, but like, what about Warcry?
It's
Right. And to your point, is like really, really relevant. If Age of Sigmar is like 20% of the 40K sales in terms of like, I don't remember what the ratio is exactly. It's like, and Kill Team just kind of took off. How can you have all these little Age of Sigmar games like actually generating enough revenue to be worthwhile?
it's that segment of fantasy of their particularly the Age of Sigmar pie is the actually I just thought of it as you're talking, is like, if we're talking about like small fast furious games to entice people into the Age of Sigmar world, you also have to include Spearhead.
Yep. Yeah.
We have 4 ways to play Sigmar that's small and simple. It's like way too saturated in that, and it actually now it's like too many. Like, why? People don't even. They're like, which one are my friends playing? I don't know.
And Spearhead blows all those away. Like,
Spearhead is by far the best one, right? Like because it's like a regular
game. It also
game.
leads to the bigger game, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably just a better idea.
Yeah. I definitely think they've lost their minds a little bit in that realm. I think they should probably call one of these. Path to Glory is free, so you can keep that in the books. That's just like that doesn't require to anything there. Of the and then Spearhead, I think that's not going.
That's
away.
a mainstay now. Yeah, that's
So I think either the Underworlds or the Warcry, they need to either meld somehow, which actually could be kind of cool if you could meld a game or get rid of one or whatever. I don't know.
I feel like they kind of made their choice already. Because like I was surprised to see them relaunch Underworlds. Like, so have they not just made?
This is the part of GW that sometimes kills me. Is I know everything has to be like staggered in advance and
like super ahead of time.
And
right?
like it's like a lot of big companies that have lots of releases. You just like slot them in like every queue. We do this, and it's like on a cycle. This is when the Switch 2 comes out, when the Switch 3 comes out, when the PS6 it's like very set and like clockwork. And I do think though that you have to sometimes stop it. And I know they're also like they're also in a time where they don't really like killing things because the negative publicity is not great. It's very loud. I guarantee you'll have a whole pile of like, there's still videos made today about Sacrosanct or whatever being, or someone's Lord of the Rings, I think, which guy, Easterlings, Forge-World Easterlings got killed or something.
Did they really?
I saw that I didn't watch the video, but it looked like that's what they were talking about. I could be wrong, but anyway, the point is maybe they're trying not to do that so much, and they've already spent the money, so to speak, because there's just artists and developers already working on these things. But I think Age of Sigmar as a setting is so rich and awesome that they really should think of something else.
You know what really tells me that Warcry might be in trouble, or is that the new spearheads they showed off for the summer have Warcry all of them have Warcry warbands.
Oh, reboxing them in, yeah.
So clearly something's going to change. Like something is going to happen here.
To recycle.
There's going to be a big like. So let's move our conversation to that. So like let's talk about what might happen. Like what obviously option one is like they just scrap it, right? They're just like, okay, we're not going to continue with Warcry. We're going to move all of the.
It's too clean. It's just not evil enough. This is a really cool piece of scenery. It's very, very 40k and it's very, very Imperial too. But sometimes what you want to do is just customize your scenery collection to help it tell the narrative more of what you want to tell on your battlefields, and also maybe suit your army a bit better too. So we thought it'd be really fun to take this and deface it in the name of the Dark Powers of Chaos, as if it was maybe on an Imperial Shrine World or something. The word bearers have shown up and made everyone have a really, really bad day. So I'm going to kind of turn it into a Chaos altar, so to speak. Now, I've got some loose ideas as to how to do this, so I've just gathered some bits and pieces which are going to be useful for it, including some spare sprues, and one of those is the ever useful Chaos Marauder Horseman. This is a really useful thing to have as spare pieces because there's loads of cool bits and pieces on here you can use in all kinds of Chaos conversions. I've also got some razor wire from the Army Painter, and I've got some fine jewellery chain. This is 1mm for each link here, so this is going to be useful too. And other odds and ends, and of course all the usual tools like clippers, craft knife, glue, all that sort of thing. And my plan is to start out by doing some work on the head, because at the moment that miniature's got a sort of iron halo over it. It's a bit too Imperial, so what I'm going to do is cut that away first of all to allow access to the head. And then on the head, I'm going to start just cutting away with the knife some notches either side of the hair, just in line with the eyes, because what I'm going to do is wrap some razor wire around the head as if it's a blindfold. And there we are. I'm happy with the barbed wire wrapped around a head like a blindfold. So now we can replace the iron halo with a Chaos Star. What I've got is one from the Chaos Marauder Horseman sprue, and it's got quite a lot happening on the inside. So this just needs to be clipped away and removed. And then it's just a matter of testing the fit and gluing it into place over her head. And there we have the replacement for the Iron Halo, that nice Chaos Star. Very happy with that. So now we can move on to the next thing, which is going to be to wrap some chain around the statue. And this is going to be threaded through some various chaotic icons, if that offering's been left on it. And to do this, what I'm going to be using is some jewelry chain. Now, I picked up this really cheaply off Amazon. This is 1mm length, so it's very small and it is quite fiddly, but there is a way to get around that. I've also got some chaotic icons that are going to be used here, and these are just spare bits and pieces from various kits that are in my bits box. And the plan is to cut a length of this chain and then find a starting point to hide it in, which will be beneath one of the shoulders. And what I'm going to do is just get some super glue on a paper clip, and then I'm going to use that just to dot some glue into the area where the chain's going to be starting, and this will fix it really well in that position there. From this point on, it's just a matter of threading on those chaos icons and then wrapping the chain around the miniature and doing that same trick with the paper clip to glue it back on the other side. Once that's done, we can then just spend some time just getting everything in position and then gluing it down. With super glue soaked into those chain links, they've now dried rock solid, so it's on to the next thing, which is going to be to return to the trusty Chaos Marauder Horseman sprue, because on this sprue you get loads of these little sort of sets of chain with various things hanging from them, like Chaos Stars and Skulls, that sort of thing. Now at the head of them there's a round disc that looks like a nail that's been hammered into something, which means all we need to do is just clip these off the sprue, clean them up, then glue them around the statue. Now those details are glued on, I think the statue's looking really chaotic, but it is holding aloft a flaming torch, which is a perfect place for another icon of chaos. So what I'm going to do is cut away the flaming brand at the end of it and replace it with this chaos icon that comes in the Chaos Space Marine box set. Now with that done, I think we've finished gluing bits on, so instead it's time to remove a bit of plastic, because what we want to do is make it look like this statue was the centerpiece of a firefight. So it's time to add a bit of battle damage to it. And to do that, I'm going to be starting out with a pin device drill like this. And what I'm going to do is use this to drill some holes into the miniature as if bullets have struck it, including a few in like a row to give the appearance of some strafing gunfire. With that done, I'm also going to take to it with the clippers just to chip away a little bit of the surface to make it look like some stones cracked away. Then I'm going to do the same sort of thing with my craft knife. Now you can of course really go to town with this if you want to, but I'm just going to carry on just approaching it like this until I'm happy. And there we have plenty of battle damage on the statue, and I'm really happy with that, so we're about ready to start painting it. But before we do so, remember, if you're a youngster, be sure to get an adult to do the work with a knife for you, and with the clippers, if you're carving into the plastic, just be careful not to try and cut away too much at once so that you don't damage the blades. Now on this plastic there is a little bit of misting going on from the old super glue I've been using, but that's not a problem because as soon as some undercoat's on that, it'll cover it up completely. So I'm going to go outside now and I'm going to spray this with desert sand from the Colour Forge, really good starting point for the stone colour we're going to go for, and then when I come back, we'll start painting it. And here we have the model with that undercoat now applied, and you can see it just makes everything look like it really belongs together. It really sort of completes it nicely, and so what we can do is now move into the next phase of really getting some more colour on there. Now I'm going to be using desert sand as that undercoat, but also as the original base coat for the main parts of the stone and the statue. So we're looking at the figure and also the skulls that she's leaping above. And so what we're going to do is just go straight into apply some shading over the top of it. So here I'm going to be using a wash, but because I don't want to darken things down too much, I'm going to be thinning it down with a medium just to take away the edge of the paint essentially. So I'm going for a dark brown wash. I've got some Battlewood wash here. I'm going to be mixing it with Lamium medium just to dilute it down. So what we need to do is create that on the palette, and because we're painting such a large model, I am going to use a big brush here. I've just picked out a medium dry brush from Citadel, mainly just for the size of it. You can see I've got the Battlewood wash there already on the palette, and what I'm going to do is just get a really good amount of the medium next to it. So roughly 2:1 ratio is what I'm looking for here, so about that much the medium will do. Then it's just a matter of thoroughly mixing those together to get our diluted version of the wash, so really mix it there like that. And then it's going to be a matter of just painting it all over the figure and the skulls too. I'm just going to load up a good amount, pick a starting point, so around the middle of the miniature should do, so just around here. It's just a matter of painting it on and pushing it into all the corners as we go along. Now when you're applying this quantity of wash to a model, it is going to start running towards the bottom of it and it will start pooling, so I'm going to be keeping an eye out for that. It's going to be happening in particular on these robes down here and on the legs too, so if you spot that happening, like a big bubble of it appearing like down there for example, just use your brush like a sponge to soak away the excess paint and redistribute it elsewhere around the model there like that. Now once it's been painted all over these parts, we've got to give it plenty of time to dry, so I'm going to be leaving it for about 45 minutes before moving on to the next stage. Once that wash is completely dry, you'll be left with some nice shading in all the texture of the stone, and you can see all the little cracks and things we added in there are showing up nicely too. And so now what we can do is some dry brushing to start to lift the colour and bring it close towards more of an ivory. So what we'll do is move to a slightly lighter colour of bone than we used for that undercoat. So in our case, that's going to be Skeleton Legion. And I'm going to be dry brushing this on quite heavily with a fairly large brush. I've got a medium dry brush from Citadel once again, and if you are using the same brush for this stage as you used in the previous stage, just make sure it's completely clean and dry before you start doing this, because otherwise it'll go quite streaky and looks a bit horrible. So once the brush is completely dry, you just need to get a small amount of that paint on the tip of the bristles, just there like that. Then get some tissue paper and use it to work the paint into the brush whilst also removing the excess. And you can see I'm gradually moving along to the right here, because what I'm testing here is basically just how much paint is still in the brush. When you're down to about that sort of strength there on the texture of the paper, you're then ready to go. And with this, what we need to do is start applying it in a sort of round motion. So pointing the brush straight at the model and going in a round application like this. And the result is you can see you get a soft application of that colour on the raised up surfaces, but because we're being quite quick about it, the bristles can't fall into the recesses, so we retain all the shading that we got from that wash. Once that's done, you can see we've lifted that colour back up, and we've also started to increase the contrast that we've got between the light and dark parts, but we need to go further than that, so we're going to dry brush again using a lighter bone colour now. I'm going to use some Vampire Fang for this, and then what we can do is a very light dry brush with an off-white. So here I'm going to use some Ivory Tusk. But we're going to be starting out with Vampire Fang, and to do this I'm going back to that same medium dry brush, and again I have made sure it's completely clean and dry before starting to do this. Just like before, we want to get some of this paint on the tip of the brush, then get some tissue paper and use it to work the paint into the brush whilst also removing the excess. And whilst the application is going to be largely the same this time, we just want it to be just that little bit lighter. So you can see on the paper I'm stopping just a little bit further along now, so there's less paint there left on the brush. And what we want to do is go at it in the same sort of way with that rounded motion, because what will happen is the colour will start to catch the parts that are standing out even more, giving us more of a highlight. So you can see just around there, but you just want to build it up to about that sort of level across all of the statue. Once you've brought the colour up to about this point, you're then ready to move on to a lighter tone here. So I've got some Ivory Tusk, so this is an off-white essentially, and again we're going to dry brush it on, but this time it's more of a light flicking motion. So you can see I'm being very gentle, just allowing the brush just to catch the sharpest edges and corners as we go along, just to help them pop out with that lighter colour. And with that done, you can see the result is that really lovely, almost sandstone kind of colour there on the statue. And so with that done, what we can now do is turn our attention to the plinth, because there's quite a few more colours on here. The first of which needs to be a dark grey for the main part of it. So I'm going to use some Dungeon Stone Grey for this, and to apply it, I'm going for a monster brush here from the Army Painter. So quite a rough and ready brush, because this is just some simple base coating here. There is a lot of ground to cover, which is why I've gone for such a large brush, but really we do need to be careful when we get close to the skulls that are on top of the plinth. So just need to take care around there. But for this, just need to make sure the paint's thinned down and under control on your brush, and then it's a matter of just blocking this area in. And we're looking at this part right down here. Now, I'm not concerned about minor details on it just yet, so just make sure to block the entire thing in. But you can see what I mean about the skulls. Just take care when you get close to these parts just around here. Now that we've got that plinth base coated, we can start picking out some of the details on it, and we'll start out with some gold. Here I'm going to go for some dragon's gold, but then we also need to base coat the wax of the candles, and here I think a dark red's going to look nice and evil, so I'm going to go for some Asmodeus red here. But we're going to start out with the gold, so I'm using Dragon's Gold here, and to apply it I'm actually going for a medium base coat brush from Citadel. Now this brush is quite rough and ready, but for our purposes here it's ideal because it's great for getting to all the nooks and crannies on all the various details we've got, and you can see it's still holding a fairly good point, so it does have enough accuracy here for what we need. So as usual, we just need to make sure the paint's thinned and ready, and then it's time to start looking for any details that we want to pick out with gold. Now on the plinth there are a fair few that I want to do, and that's going to be these little statues we've got in amongst the archways. So just here, it's going to block these in. I'm also going to keep an eye out for little fleur-de-lis icons such as this one right here, and I'm also going to pick these out too, so just very carefully there like that. But there are some other parts on the statue itself that I want to get in gold, and that's going to be all this chaos iconography that we've added. So for example, this eye right here, I'm going to block this in at this stage as well. With that now done, we're ready to move on to base coating the wax of the candles, and here I'm going for a darker red. So I've got some Asmodeus red applied with a size 1 brush from Artis Opus. with that, we've now got those details picked out on the plinth, and you can see too, I've got some gold on those various details that we stuck onto the statue up there too. So it's now time to apply some wash over these details, and I want to go for a bit of a sort of a cold feel here for the stone especially. So I'm going to use two colours at the same time. I'm going to use some Battlemud wash again, so a nice dark brown, but I'm also going to use some Necrosis green wash, which is sort of like a dark olive green, and this is going to give that sort of natural sort of weathered appearance to it. So what we need to do is have those ready, and you can see I've got both together here on the palette. To apply them, I am using a medium shade brush from Citadel for the plinth, but when it comes to that gold that appears on the smaller details on the statue, I will switch to a size 1 brush for a bit more control in those parts, just to keep it away from the stone essentially. But what we need to do is just load it with one of them. So I'm going to start out with the brown, and on the plinth we're just going to start applying it onto an area. So here, for example, just working it over all the details that we've done. Now every now and then what I'm going to do is just switch to the other colour. So without even washing the brush, just going to grab some of the green and apply that too, and let them mix freely on the miniature so we get a nice random appearance with these two colours. Now the wash is dry, all those colours are tied together, and we've got lots of shading down there too, and you can see the same is true on all the various gold details on the rest of the statue as well. So now I'm going to move on to concentrating on finishing off the grey stone, and here I'm going to be dry brushing it again, just like with that statue, starting out with a light grey. Here I'm going to use some Carcharodon grey, and once that's done we'll then move on to a light bone colour just to give it a slightly sort of natural worn feel. So here I'm going to be using Vampire Fang. But first of all we need the light grey, so I'm using Carcharodon grey, and to apply this one I'm going for my small dry brush this time, so just for a little bit more accuracy than we had with a larger dry brush earlier on, but the setup's just the same with that bit of paint on the tip of the brush, and use the tissue paper to work it into the bristles, going down to about this sort of strength this time. So with that reached, we can now start applying it over the grey, and whilst we do need to be careful of the stone that appears around there, so all those skulls and things, we don't have to worry quite so much really about the gold, because even though we are going to catch it, I mean it's just about inevitable, same with the candle wax, we will clean that up later on. So for now it's just a matter of a light flicking motion like this to make sure that you bring out all the edges and corners on that grey stone. And now that's done, we can move on to a light bone. So here I've got some Vampire Fang, which I've set up on the same brush, again making sure the brush is completely clean and dry before starting this, and this is a lighter application, so I've really made sure there's hardly any paint left on the bristles, and you can see again it's just that light flicking motion to give a slightly dusty appearance to the stone. And with that, that grey stone is completed, and you can see doing that light dry brush of a bone colour really does set it off, and that always works really well on all kinds of scenery projects, so it's a great little trick to know. But with that done, we're now going to return to that gold because we need to clean it up, but also we want to highlight it too. So what I'm going to do is return to Dragon's Gold with a layer, and then once that's done we'll highlight it using some glistening gold. But first of all we need Dragon's Gold, and to apply this one I'm going for my size 1 brush right from the start here, because this time the application does need to be careful. We can't really dry brush with the detail being so intensely surrounded by all of that stone, so we won't be able to avoid catching it. So all we've got to do is get this thinned and ready, and then it's just a quick once over on these golden details just to basically tidy them up and remove any dry brushing from that we had from that grey earlier. So for example, if you look at this little statue right here, what I'm going to do is just apply this gold onto the raised up flat areas just quickly there like that, just brushing in a downward motion, letting the bristles just fall on the raised up parts. And you can see what that does is just cleans it up and brings that shine back to it as well. And I want to be doing the same sort of thing onto these little spires that we've got. So just here, for example, again, layer on that there like that. But also we've got these various designs that appear further up. So we've got the Chaos Star right here, and it's going to be the same sort of procedure where we're looking for the flatter, more open areas. And whenever you encounter a recess, just be careful not to drop into it so as to retain the definition from the wash. And now that we've got that shine returned to the gold, we can apply a highlight with a paler gold. So here I've got some glistening gold. When it comes to these small statues, all we need to do is just lightly brush it on in a downward motion like this to pick out some of that raised texture. On these little spires, we just need to apply a small amount towards the tip of each one, there like that, just to make it a little bit more shiny. And then when it comes to the larger icons up here, I'm going to be doing a bit more like edge highlighting, but being scenery, we don't need to go to the same level of accuracy as we normally would do on a regular miniature. So instead, I'm just looking for prominent edges that really stand out. I'm just going to flick along them with the side of the brush. Now that highlight's been applied, the gold is complete, and so what we should do is the same sort of thing on the candles by starting out by cleaning them up with that layering, because remember the dry brush has caught them a bit. So here I'm going to return to some Asmodeus red, and for the highlight I'm going to use a bright red. So here I'm going for Demon red. But first we need Asmodeus Red, and to apply it I'm going to go for the size 1 brush once again, and here all you need is a small amount of this thinned and ready, just being careful to make sure we have that good point there on the brush. Then with this we want to start applying this colour onto the flat parts of these candles whilst avoiding recesses. So really what we're looking for are the parts of the wax that are dribbling down, such as this one just here, where I'm going to paint next to it, just concentrating on the flat part just there, because again, just being careful not to drop into that recess, instead just pick out the dribbling wax right there. So it's just a matter of doing this on each of these candles. Now that's done, we can highlight the wax, and to do this I've switched to a slightly smaller brush. This is a size 0 from Artisopus, just for a little bit more control, because we want to pick out the parts that really stand out, which will be the dribbling parts going down the side just there, and the dribbling parts at the bottom as well. Now be sure to also highlight around the top of the wax, so just around there, directly beneath the flame, and then skip past the recess, just there where the flame meets the wax, and pick out the entire flame as well. Now that we've finished highlighting the wax, we can move on to completing the flames on these candles, and we've already got a nice bright red on there, but we need to go even brighter than this. So now it's time to add an orange, and here I'm going to use some orange flare. Then we'll need a bright yellow, so here I'm going to use some yellow flame, and then finally we need just a touch of a pure white. So in this case I'm using some white star. But first of all we need the orange, so I'm using orange flare, and to apply it I'm going to stick to my size 0 brush here. What we want to do is just layer this on top of the bright red that we've got so far. So once you've got this loaded up on your brush, we can start looking for these flames, and the idea is to kind of focus it towards the middle of each one, leaving only a hint of that red around the outside. So for example, in this one, it's going to apply it just there, leaving that red just a little bit on the outside and a touch of it at the tip as well. Next up we need a bright yellow, so I'm using some yellow flame here, applied now with a really small brush. This is a size 00 here, and all we need to do is just introduce a little bit of yellow in the middle of the orange towards the base of the candle. So just little dots like this. And then finally we just need to add a tiny dot of white star at the bottom centre of each flame. And with that, the candles are finished, and so the dais is just about complete, so we can move on to the next thing, which is going to be to paint in all the chains and the razor wire. And here we need to start out with a base coat of a good silver, so I'm using some Cerakote silver for this. Then we'll need that brown wash once again, so it's back to some Battlewood wash here, and then for the highlight I'm going to be using some Mithril Blade, applied sort of like a dry brush, but using a regular size brush, which you'll see in a moment. But first we need that base coat, so I'm using Cerakote silver, and to apply this I'm going to be using my size 1 brush. And this is the tricky colour here, because when base coating this in, we just need to be careful to avoid that surrounding stone. So it's just a matter of being patient essentially with this. As usual, get the paint thinned and under control on the brush, and then we can start picking these features out. And if we take a look at the head, it's going to be a matter of just very carefully moving in and picking out the raised texture, just taking our time to work the bristles into all the little recesses there like that. I'm also going to be picking out that chaotic halo that we've got around the head. So again, just taking care here just to be really neat and tidy around that stone. With the base coat done, we're now ready to move on to Battlewood wash, and all we need to do is paint this directly over the top of all that silver as neatly as possible. And with the wash dry, we can now highlight all that silver using some Mithril Blade. And to apply this, I'm doing something a little bit unusual. I have here an older medium brush. This is a medium layer brush from Citadel, and I loaded it up with the colour, but then I just gently wiped away some of it on some tissue paper, leaving not much on there. So a bit like doing a dry brush, and you can see by just lightly applying this over the top of the razor wire, and also we can go over the chain links, it just catches the raised surface. So it kind of dry brushes it for a highlight, but it allows us a great degree of control. And now that we've got that silver highlighted, we can move on to adding some cool effects onto the statue to finish it off. And the first of these is going to be to add some sooty residue around the bullet holes in it. And for this, what we'll need is a pitch black. I'm going to use some Doom Death Black here, and to apply it, I'm going back to that medium base coat brush. And the reason is because this has got some quite stiff bristles, so ideal for the sort of stippling motion we're going to be doing, but also it's holding a fairly good point, meaning we'll have some accuracy onto those bullets. Now what we need to do is just get the brush loaded up, and I'm going to kind of set it up like a dry brush, but you can see I'm quite purposely moving the brush like this, keeping it fairly flat on the tissue to make sure the bristles stay together. And with that prepared, all we need to do is identify them. So for example, these ones we got here in the wing, all I'm going to do is just point the brush straight at them and just start dotting it around like this, so we build up that black steadily around the bullet hole. Here you can see doing that stippling with the black really brings those details to life. So we can now move on to the next effect, which is going to be to add some rust onto all of that silver metal. And for this, I'm going to be using some dry rust brown. Now to apply it, I'm going for my size 0 brush this time. And what we need to do with this paint is thin it down with lots of water to make it really runny. So you can see I'm adding quite a lot of water on the side there, just bringing in a little bit of that paint, just mixing it thoroughly so we get that very, very thin version of it there like that. And with this, we just need to load up and start painting it into areas where you get moisture collecting on the silver details. So when it comes to things like the chain, it's just a matter of just basically painting it over it like this, just letting it run into the recesses so it stains it with that colour. Now in addition, we can allow some of this to appear on the stone as well as the water starts running and bringing some of the metal with it. So for example, if I just add some rust onto this chain just here, we can also start applying some of it around where it meets the stone around here and start to pull it down as if it's been following water running down the stone. And here we have the result of building up that rusty colour. You can see it adds a nice bit of character to the miniature, especially with how it's staining the surrounding stone around all that silver metal. And so with that done, we can now move on to the final effect, which is going to be to add some blood onto the statue, because of course it wouldn't be chaos without blood. So here I'm going to be using blood for the blood god, and to apply it I'm going for a really fine brush, so right down to the size 00 here. And the idea now with the blood is to give the appearance that some rituals have been done around the statue, or perhaps some people have been shot up against it, that sort of thing. Also maybe something supernatural going on, which is where I'm going to start, because I'm just going to load up some of this on the brush and start applying it as if the statue is crying tears of blood beneath this razor wire. So I'm just going to go in here and just start poking some around where the eyes would be, and then just start drawing it down on the cheek. So just sort of dotting it down like this. So we've got that little trail on that side just there, just building it up just close towards the eyes like that. And the same on this side too, where we can have some there, and then we can have some of it splattering down the front of the armour down there like that. Now in addition, I'm going to be adding some further down, so you can see we've got all these skulls down here. I want to give the impression that maybe some rituals have been done around these, so we can start doing the impression of things like a chaos star on the forehead of some. So all I'm going to do is just start dotting this on like that to get that central line. Then we can turn it to do the one going across from it, so just here, just along the center there like that, and then we can add in the extra two, so one just there and then one just here. And once you've got that initial pattern applied, it's very easy just to start bulking it up with additional, well, applications of a little bit more blood really, so just dotting on a bit more to make some areas a bit thicker, make it look a little bit more natural, and then from there we can also have bits trickling down as well. So now it's just a matter of basically doing as much of this as you like, and it's really entirely up to you. I'm going to be adding all sorts of bits and pieces like this, and once it's done, the statue will be complete. And with all that blood now applied, the statue is complete and ready to take pride of place in the centre of a battlefield. So this little project has been lots of fun, because this statue is an amazing piece of scenery with so much character, but to change it and turn it into something chaotic is actually really fun, because now it becomes totally unique and it'll add a lot of character and a lot of story to a battlefield. If you've never tried doing anything like this before, I do recommend you give it a go, because, well, it's tons of fun. So we hope it's inspired you, and we'll see you again very soon.
What is the difference between elaborate DIY coffee setups versus someone just taking a tin of instant coffee and drinking that?
It's a reconstituted cup of coffee. They will historically sort of harvest some of the aroma and inject that under the foil lid, so that when you pop the thing open, it smells pretty good. That's not in the sort of ground granules that you'll work with. That was just put there to give you that moment of like, oh, nice.
Is there a way, or I'm not even condoning what I'm about to suggest, is there any difference in human fermented coffee?
I gather someone in Portland or Oregon has tried, but I don't know, and I'm not sure I'd be willing to try.
What are some things that can lead you down the path of picking a really good cup of coffee?
I mean, coffee's difficult because...
Well, James, I've been watching you for a very long time on YouTube, so, it's fantastic to have you, joining me here, and hopefully one day I can join you for a nice, well-brewed cup of coffee as well.
That sounds good. I would be delighted to.
And I really think coffee has had a fantastic makeover in recent years, because when I was growing up in the 90s, coffee was seen as a vice alongside cigarettes and alcohol.
Sure.
Often it would be portrayed as something nefarious. But in the last 10 years or so, in popular media, it's now been touted as a health food, a superfood, and which it rightly is. It contains lots of fantastic things. How has that been made to be a thing where it's just gone from something seemingly so bad to something so healthy, and the pendulum has swung almost the complete other way now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, coffee itself has changed. In the 90s, I think coffee was broadly considered a necessary evil in many ways. Like, it was not a source of pleasure or delight in people's lives. It was a source of a good, cheap stimulant. First thing in the morning, came out of a jar. It was instant. It was quick, and it got you going. However, that phrase works for you. I think in the last 20 years, really, we've had the rise of what is broadly termed specialty coffee, right? Which is coffee that is sold at a premium price because it tastes nicer. Ultimately, that's the easiest, neatest definition of it. And so I think people have started to ultimately enjoy coffee more. It tastes better than it ever has before. It's easier to get something that has all of the flavor and just less of the bitterness, less of the harshness, less of the woodiness, all of those kind of things. And so our consumption has changed quite dramatically. In the UK specifically, we were very, very heavy instant coffee drinkers, and not that much of it. Coffee slowly crept up as this out-of-home drink. In the sort of late 90s, as sort of Starbucks and the chains arrived, we got into the idea of going out for coffee. And then in the early 2000s, it kind of really kicks off. And I would say from the late sort of 2008 to 2010 is when the sort of surge of specialty begins in most of the UK and most of the world, really. Now the UK drinks more coffee than tea, which I think is fascinating. And, an interesting point of, I suppose, national identity for us. Tea has always been an at-home thing, and I think coffee dominated out of home. We don't really like people to make tea for us unless it's a family member. We don't want to spend money at a cafe for a cup of tea that we know costs 10p and we can do it better ourselves. So we've always been a bit hesitant about spending money on tea out of home. But coffee, certainly post-pandemic, became very big in-home as well. We brought that into our lives, and that's why we've become this sort of slightly more coffee than tea kind of culture. As for the health stuff, it's an interesting one. Like, obviously coffee's been studied heavily. Caffeine itself, it's also worth separating at this point. Caffeine is not coffee. Like, it's one aspect of coffee. It's the drug that we're most familiar with, but it's not the entirety of coffee's interesting chemistry. And I think more recently we've begun to get more interested in the other sort of aspects of why coffee may be healthy. You know what I mean? If you look at the big kind of epidemiology studies with the sort of biobank stuff, coffee was an easy thing to sort of track. And I think people quite early began to see these sort of trends with positive associations with coffee drinking. And I think we've started to investigate that a little bit more now to try and understand, is there actually something there?
Yeah, I guess, that was one point you made about people often wrongly use the word caffeine and coffee interchangeably. And as you mentioned, it's one component of something, that has a multitude of different beneficial compounds. And just diving into some of those health benefits you're listing and those large epidemiological associations, it's been now seen that there's some good positive health associations with gut health, metabolic health, heart health, obviously as some sort of psychoactive component to it as well, potentially brain health, certainly from alertness and focus point of view. What is it about those other compounds? Is it primarily, can we attribute them to the polyphenols, or is there something else to it as well, almost from a ritualistic point of view, which helps with those other things?
It's a very good question. I feel compelled, having been corrected on this myself, to sort of say that coffee has no polyphenols. It has phenolic compounds, but no polyphenols. I don't really deeply understand the difference between those two things, but scientists in the area would want me to get it right and have emailed me to make sure that I do when I talk about these things. So, yeah, I think we're starting to see some more data around the phenolic stuff, the fiber in coffee, ultimately the gut health association, which is good news if, because caffeine isn't all good news for everybody. There's obviously, for some people, it can exacerbate anxiety or other issues. And so caffeine should be off the table for some people. If it disrupts your sleep, it should absolutely be off the table. I think we now understand sleep is probably more important than we have previously considered. As for health, at the moment, this outside of I think the most recent study I've seen was one that Dr. Tim Spector was involved with, which identified a particular bacteria that is found in the guts of coffee drinkers. And I think it's a Lawsonobacter it doesn't eat sugar. I can't remember that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's interesting because I think that's the first time there's almost a perfect correlation between a food and a singular bacteria. And that's a butyrate producing bacteria. So in theory, maybe that's a kind of pathway of goodness. I'm very hesitant to talk with any confidence or certainty in a lot of health stuff, but especially microbial stuff, where we don't really know what a good, healthy gut is.
Exactly.
We you know what I mean? And so a lot of people will say, oh, it damages your gut microbiome. Well, it changes it, but we don't have a gold standard of like, this is good. And so it's an area I get quite nervous around. And, with coffee and epidemiology, I also get quite nervous around that sort of stuff. There was a study, I think, recently that talked about how people who drank coffee later in the day had worse outcomes. And so there was an association between sort of late coffee drinking and various worse outcomes from, I think, some biobank data. Someone had done a little study on this. I worry about that because it doesn't really ask the question of who might be drinking coffee later in the day. What might be leading to them drinking coffee later in the day? Are they working a job that requires a lot of focus? Are they in a stressful environment? Is it the coffee, or is coffee just a kind of byproduct of underlying cause? But you can take that data and say, ooh, if you drink coffee later in the day, there are worse health outcomes. And you're like, well, that may not be true. And that's the bit with epidemiology that makes me very nervous, I think. It's just easy to draw associations without really digging into the why of the association.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are loose associations. I mean, we can say that the phenolic compounds maybe select for certain bacteria, which may then provide a certain benefit. The coffee beans contain soluble fibers and prebiotic fibers, which we know in broad strokes are good for gut health. However, people with certain gut conditions or gut sensitivities, it may not be so good for them and provide bloating and cramping. And I guess, we can make broad claims on coffee in general. And this is where I really wanted to dive in. So, we can talk about fruits being healthy in general and plants and vegetables being healthy. Coffee beans are derived, obviously, it's a plant-based food. And it would be doing coffee a disservice if we, labeled all coffee the same. And the same way that if you eat an orange, you can get a different nutrient profile than if you eat an apple. Similarly, I would like to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that if you consume a certain type of coffee bean grown in a certain place in the world and produced in a certain way, you can get slightly different nutrients than a different type of coffee grown in a different country, exposed to different microbes.
Yeah, I think there's no question that there's some pretty significant difference in the chemical composition of different coffee beans. And the good news, I suppose, is that by and large, better tasting coffee appears to have, for want of a better term, better chemistry, if that makes sense. It has higher levels of phenolic compounds. There's a lot of sort of misinformation around mycotoxins that stresses me out quite a lot. Yeah. Mycotoxins are, in coffee, a product usually of mold, where the raw coffee has gone moldy and you can have some mycotoxin formation there. That usually happens before the coffee's roasted and goes through a fairly destructive chemical process. But nonetheless, you tend to find almost no mycotoxins in specialty coffee. But you'll see a lot of people sort of pushing, oh no, but this coffee is mycotoxin free. And you're like, well, most good coffee is mycotoxin free. But yeah, if you're drinking much, much, much cheaper coffee, yeah, your risk of mycotoxin levels might be slightly higher because those coffees may be subject to mold because no one really cares about the quality of them. They're just a commoditized product.
So those mycotoxins, those sort of dangerous byproducts from fungal infestation potentially, are they potentially present in larger amounts, or the risk of them being present in larger amounts higher in certain countries? For example, you can have coffee beans that are grown in higher altitude versus lower altitude. Lower altitude means maybe more insects. Does that increase the risk of mycotoxin formation, moisture formation, which can increase the risk of that, etc.?
No, that's not the correlation there. It's complicated here. I'm going to separate altitude just quickly, but ultimately, mold formation is going to happen post-harvest. There's a few post-harvest processes that the coffee seed goes through, and then ultimately, once it's sort of finished post-harvest processing, during export potentially, there's your sort of risk if it's not kept in a suitable environment, if it's kept in a humid environment. That's where you may have mold formation and sort of lower quality things. Anyone buying higher quality product would reject anything with any presence of mold in it because it would fall below, the contracted standard for sort of cup quality and raw bean quality. Altitude is interesting because altitude broadly correlates to quality in coffee. So the higher you grow coffee, generally speaking, the higher quality it is. Interestingly, you see a little bit less caffeine production in the higher altitudes because there are less insects, and caffeine exists in the coffee plant as an insect repellent.
Oh.
That's its primary function. Yeah, it's a defense chemical. It exists in other plants for different reasons. I think you've seen I don't know if you've seen the studies on certain flowers produce caffeine, and it appears to improve memory in bees, which is a lovely sort of idea and story.
To improve pollination?
Mm-hmm, that's the sort of theory of why that may be the case.
Wow.
Though I think that caffeine, as I recall, it's the same compound but evolved through different pathways, if that makes sense. So
can we harvest any of these other flowers that contain caffeine?
I think by and large plants don't like it when you harvest the flowers because obviously that interrupts the sort of the pollination, the fruiting, all the rest of it. And so we could, but we would obviously damage the tree's fruiting potentially. It depends what the tree is. I think it's orange blossom off the top of my head produces caffeine in the flowers, but I may be wrong on that one there. Caffeine obviously exists in things like tea leaves, and you can harvest it there. Synthetic caffeine is now entirely possible. China is producing synthetic caffeine, which has sort of interesting talking to decaffeinators who obviously collect the caffeine and sell it. The price of caffeine has been sort of deeply undercut by synthetic caffeine, and so generally speaking, people buying caffeine that has come from coffee or tea will label it as natural caffeine. If it just says caffeine, it may well be synthetic. Obviously, always important to note that synthetic caffeine and natural caffeine are entirely identical, and your body can tell no difference between the two things. But there's no, to me, it's just interesting that people value natural caffeine higher in a funny sort of way. Anyway, going all the way back to altitude, what coffee trees like is lots of sunshine, but cool nights. That's the sort of thing. You want the diurnal swing. So lots of warm sunshine in the day, feed the plant, but cool nights slow down maturation. So you end up with a denser seed at the center of this thing. And so that's why you tend to see higher quality coffees that are denser, have more interesting chemistry, a lot more acids in them too, which some people don't like. Some people do. You tend to find a lot more complexity of ultimately aroma in the finished coffee bean from these higher altitude coffees, less earthiness, less woodiness, typically a little bit more sweetness. And so altitude is a reasonably good proxy for quality, but not a perfect one.
So when you say altitude, we're thinking of South America, Colombia, East Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia. Are those sort of the countries where you get high altitude coffee beans grown?
Essentially, the belt of coffee growing is the Tropic of Cancer down to the Tropic of Capricorn. So that belt around the Earth, anything there with sufficient altitude, or in the case of island coffees, a sort of matching swing between daytime and nighttime. So yeah, you tend to see coffees in places like Jamaica, Cuba, Hawaii, but you still can have high quality coffees produced at these lower altitudes because you tend to see bigger temperature drops at night. I assume that the cooling sea air comes in and just drops temperatures. So you have a sort of matching swing day to night. So it's not a perfect proxy. And again, there are, because it's ultimately tied to climate as much as anything else, it's not a hard and fast rule of like anything grown at 1,500 meters will be excellent, anything grown at 1,200 meters will be terrible, or 800 meters or whatever else. Islands can be down at 500 meters, whereas if you bought a coffee from, say, Brazil at 500 meters, that would tend to taste much worse than an island coffee. So slightly confusing, but broadly speaking, altitude's a pretty good proxy for some sort of quality.
So those higher altitude coffee beans, they're called Arabica beans. Is that generally what's attributed to high altitude?
So Arabica is a species of coffee. We grow commercially mostly two species. There are maybe 2, 3, 4 others that are of potential interest, but almost all of the world's coffee is Arabica or Robusta.
Okay.
About 2/3 Arabica, about a third Robusta, though it's increasingly Robusta, so it's probably 60-40 these days. Arabica is a plant that needs higher altitudes to flourish. So it's not particularly hardy as plants go. If you grow it at lower altitudes, it will suffer from insect damage, or it will just fail to yield well. It won't taste particularly good. The other species, which would be Coffea canephora, is mostly known as Robusta. That was the name the Belgians gave it because it was this hardier plant that would grow at these lower altitudes. Certain countries tend to grow more of that if they don't have higher altitudes. Vietnam's a very big producer of Robusta. Brazil produces quite a lot of Robusta too, but also a lot of Arabica. It's the biggest producer of coffee in the world. But these are the two main species. Robusta produces about twice the caffeine content of Arabica. Again, it just needs more defense chemical because it's grown in an environment where it needs more defenses. It's more disease resistant. There's a few kind of key diseases that are a problem in coffee growing. But to most people, it has taste characteristics that they would consider less desirable than Arabica. Robusta tends to taste a little rubbery, earthy, woody, whereas Arabica tends not to have those kind of key characteristics to it. And obviously, you can roast it so it's very bitter, but it has a lower sort of intrinsic bitterness to it, which people prefer, and a sort of higher capacity for complexity.
So beyond the difference in caffeine content, with Robusta generally having a much higher caffeine content because, I guess, for this insect repellent environment it needs to flourish in, is there also another difference in the amount of phenolic compounds? Can we say that those Arabica have higher levels of phenolic compounds? And is there a reason for that?
I believe it does have higher levels of phenolic compounds. Fiber-wise, I'm not sure if there'd be much difference. I have read the papers, but I cannot remember off the top of my head. Ultimately, Arabica seeds are much denser. So there's a lot more inside each seed, if that makes sense. And so that's typically why bean for bean, you would see higher levels. Outside of that, I don't know enough about the pathways that sort of generate the phenolic compounds to say that with any certainty. But again, if you go all the way back to, say, the Leucinobacter, there are some key acids that does seem to metabolize. And so one of those is quinic acid, and you tend to see higher levels of quinic acid in Arabica coffee than you would do in Robusta. But aside from that, most of the time, most of the decision-making for consumers around taste, and most of the decision-making for a coffee producer is really about yield, like what will give me the best crop in this environment. And sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect, as I think everyone presumes it's like wine, where every producer is thinking about the end bottle and how will that taste. Most producers are thinking, how will I, with the least risk, get the highest return from this land with this crop?
I mean, when you're talking about taste as well, obviously the Robusta versus Arabica or whatever other bean you choose will have an impact. The next impact, I guess, will also come depending on how it's roasted, whether it's a dark roast, a light roast, or a medium roast. What impact does that
So you've probably heard about Arc Raiders, a game that was teased many years ago, made by Embark Studios, who also made the finals. And originally it was Arc Raiders that got us interested in what the studio was cooking up. And with our time playing the game, guys, we have a lot to say about it. Extracted shooters are popping up left and right, which is what I really wanted to bring up today. Does Arc Raiders have something special here? So let's start with first, what is Arc Raiders? This is a third-person extraction shooter developed by Embark Studios, and it's set in a future where humanity clings to survival underground, while the surface of Earth, the Matrix parts. Now, you're a raider who fetches supplies from the surface to support the city of Speranza. And this sets up your classic extraction shooter loop. Launch a mission, loot supplies while fighting off AI robots and enemy raiders, extract alive, repeat. Now, each round lasts 30 minutes. You'll spawn at a semi-random location around the edges of the map, and you'll be given several extraction points, each with their own countdown timer, where you'll need to extract before the entire map is wiped. Now, when you arrive back home, the materials you extracted with can be sold for coins, recycled for parts, or used to craft more weapons and gear that you could take with you on future runs. Over time, you'll earn XP to level up your skill tree, increasing your overall strength the longer that you play, which takes us to the development of this game. If you've been following Arc Raiders, then you know it's been a long time coming. Almost 4 years ago, Embark Studios, which is a studio founded by ex-members of DICE, unveiled their initial trailer at the 2021 Game Awards. And at the time, Arc Raiders was set to be a free-to-play looter shooter releasing in 2022. However, shortly afterwards, plans changed. Embark had been working on 3 separate projects simultaneously, and one of them, a PvP-focused game, began to show a lot of promise. So the studio actually shifted their timelines to push out the finals in 2023. Now, let me just say the finals was one of my favorite PvP games ever. You don't see many arena shooters coming out these days, and the finals really brought something different with its class systems, its different weapon types, its destructible environments, and its tournament-style vibe. It was fantastic. Now, it was during that time frame that Arc Raiders had some fundamental changes. After adding PvP to the game, Embark decided Arc Raiders needed to be an extraction shooter, and that it would be releasing at a premium price point of $40, which I know these days is a lot to ask. Now, they announced an alpha, but lots of information was kept secret, so we didn't hear much about the game until tech testing began, which brings us to today. I've actually played this game through multiple playtests, and yes, I have seen it at some of its jankiest stages, but the game has really come a long way, guys. When you jump in after you complete the short tutorial, you'll be brought to the city of Speranza, and here is where you have your main hub. You can see your current challenges, your quests, the different navigation tabs, and you can queue to enter a match. Now, the different tabs actually contain traders, and it's here that you'll be able to deal in different wares. Think of these as almost like factions. You got Titan Wind, where you buy guns, Apollo, who has gadgets, Lance, who has medical supplies. You get the gist. Each of these vendors will trade coins for gear and will give you quests to complete in-game. Now, as you level up, you'll unlock stronger items to purchase. This is one of several systems in the game that is geared towards that long-term progression. Now, what I didn't like about the Trader tab was that the background was just a still image. In one of the opening cutscenes, we see the same scene, but the people are actively talking and working in the city, which makes it feel very alive. But in the menu, feels kind of dead. But hey, I'm also that guy that wants a social hub with the people that I'm about to go fight against. Now, this takes us to the workshop. This is where everything crafting lives. Different gear can be crafted using different workbenches. And to get more workbenches, you need to extract more materials. Now, you'll want to unlock these quickly, as they significantly increase the gear you can consistently take with you into a game. Which takes us to our characters. Underneath the character tab, you'll find appearance customization. Now, nothing really stands out here. There's some nice skins that you have to purchase using Raider tokens. I believe there's going to be paid currency. However, I did earn 40 tokens per level up in game, which means theoretically, after you've bought the game, you should be able to unlock everything. But again, monetization, not something you really know until, of course, the game is out. Now, there's also a mastery tracker that I honestly wouldn't worry about until the game fully releases. There's some good rewards tied to some of these challenges, including Raider tokens, but I don't really see players finishing many of these until they have more time to play. What we do care about, though, is the skill tree. The skill tree inside of Arc Raiders is tied to XP. Each time you level up, you are given a skill point, and you can spend those skill points in 3 separate categories. Now, there is some overlap, but generally each has their own unique benefits. Conditioning gives more stamina, strength, and increases your weight capacity. Mobility heightens the efficiency of all your movement abilities, and survival decreases noise, increases stealth, and reduces time to loot. Each one of these perks can be upgraded 5 times. Now, I heavily focused on mobility since I found found myself running a lot. I didn't see any options to reset the skill tree though, so hopefully over time you can unlock all of these notes. Now for those wondering, is there a battle pass? Yes, actually there's multiple battle passes. It seems like Embark has taken notes from Helldivers and how they set up their war bots. You see, each pass contains skins, currency, and some gadgets, and similar to skins, these passes require a premium currency. Now each one was priced at 500 tokens, so you would need to level up 38 times to afford them all, assuming you're only earning tokens via level ups. With all that out of the way though, let's talk gameplay. This is probably going to be the most important portion of this video, even more so than the monetization. People just want to know, hey, is it a fun game? Now first, before you're able to enter the game, you're able to choose your loadouts. This will include up to 2 weapons, ammo, a shield, heals, and any additional gear like grenades, traps, or barricades. Very typical of an extraction shooter. Now your raider has quick access slots on the right and 3 safe slots where anything that you place inside will stay with you even after death. Now there's also an augment slot where you can place equipment that gives your raider bonuses. For instance, the one that I used increased my inventory size, my weight capacity, and it allowed me to equip a better shield. But as you get further in the game, you'll be able to craft more. Now currently right now, there are 3 maps. You have Damn Battlegrounds, the Spaceport, and Buried City. Now my personal favorite was Spaceport specifically because of the scenery. Weather isn't dynamic, but each map appears to fall on a spectrum between sunny and stormy, and there are different times of the day, so you can expect to be playing either in broad daylight, or in the evening, or in the dead of night. Now when you do enter dark buildings, you have a flashlight that you'll need to rely on. Fortunately, it's not tied to a battery, and it's not even on a cooldown. Now in terms of movements, you can walk, you can sprint, you can crouch, slide, dodge, and even mantle. There's ladders around and even zip lines that players can place to increase map traversal. Now after entering into a match, your next goal is essentially just to start looting. Many of the items you find either sell for coins or recycle for parts. However, some of the rare items include recipes to make new equipment back at home base. Now if you come across a recipe, it's best that you store it in one of your safe slots to guarantee you take it with you. Now different buildings on the map are marked as yellow or red, which signals there is more loot to be found there. Now while you're exploring, there are a lot of audio cues that can give away your position. Footsteps, breathing, birds, cameras rigged with alarms, lots of things to keep you on your toes, as any noise you make has the potential to attract nearby raiders. Which takes us to PvP. When fighting enemy raiders, you'll see little cues that indicate when you're doing damage to their shield. Their skin will light up with blue electricity, and after you've dealt enough damage, you'll actually hear a sound cue, which will alert you that the shield is down. Now, after enemy raider is down, a red flare will be launched skyward, alerting anyone in the vicinity that a fight is taking place here, which is kind of wild. Literally, there's no hiding on this, guys. You kill somebody, people are gonna know. So you better grab that loot and dip. Now, this game is entirely third person. There is no first person ADS option. You can swap between what shoulder your camera sits on, which is great for peeking angles. And in terms of the different weapons you can choose from, each gun takes a different type of ammunition, from light, medium, heavy, and energy. Now the game tells you that heavy ammo is the most effective against arc armor plating, but that's about it from what I could gather. The more you level up, the more weapons you get access to craft. I was just using starting weapons for most of my sessions, but something I did note is that weapons do have durability. None of mine broke, at least during my play sessions. Marathon has a system in place that every time weapons change hands, it loses some durability so that eventually it does break. Now I know a big question a lot of people ask when it comes to engagements, really inside of any game, but especially an extraction shooter, considering what's at stake, your gear. Do you have time to react to someone who gets the jump on you? You do, but again, everything is very gear dependent. Just like in other extraction games, the quality of your armor greatly affects this. And I personally like that you have time to react here, even if someone does get the jump on you. At the same time, if you get the jump on someone and you really just connect your shots, you can gun them down. But hey, maybe you don't want to do that. Perhaps you want to create alliances. Arc Raiders has proximity chats, and during our time playing, it led to some funny interactions. Luke actually had a match where he teamed up with another raider, and they just fought off drones and loot buildings together until they both extracted. However, there are other matches where you try to talk to someone and they kill you, which is kind of funny because immediately after that, an arc drone confronted him and killed him. Honestly, at this point, proximity chat just needs to be a feature in every extraction shooter. It just livens things up, which takes us to probably the most unique thing about Arc Raiders thus far. It's enemy AI. If you've ever seen one of the future war scenes in Terminator, I think you get the idea here. The Arc is essentially Skynet. Giant rocket drones, spinal walkers. The only thing missing is Arnold. Trust me when I tell you, these robots are juiced. Taking out just a few ticks, rollers, or drones is no problem. But when the big guns roll in, your best bet is to stay out of sight or run like your life depends on it. On the final day of the playtest, the devs flipped a switch to add a robot called the Queen. I made the mistake of getting too close and was very lucky to escape with my life. I heard in one of the lobbies, 12 players took on this robot at once and still lost. Now granted, we only had a few play sessions to really get geared out. No one had a chance to even acquire advanced weaponry, so perhaps these walkers will be easier to take down after the full release. But from my experience, your main enemy in this game isn't other players, but actually enemy AI. And if you're smart, you're gonna want to team up with other players to take on these enemies. And that's why proximity chat exists. It's not there just for you to have a good old time. It's there because you need it. And when you take down the bigger targets, that will get you bigger rewards. Now, another point I also want to mention regarding the AI combatants is that unlike traditional pipelines of programming animations, the ARC here are trained using real physics and machine learning. So instead of programmed sets of movements, these drones learn how to fly. For instance, the spider tanks learn how to walk through real environments. And when they get shot, they don't just get staggered, they suffer real damage. I'll give you an example. While fighting against a Hornet drone, I ran out of ammo, but I had managed to take out one of its thrusters. So while the drone was struggling just above my head, I realized I could finish it off with my melee weapon. Now, I've never fought against enemy AI quite like this, and it leads to unique engagements every time. Now, I will say one of my complaints is their detection systems can be difficult to understand. I was able to successfully hide in some of the bushes from one drone, but later when I tried to hide from a Bastion, he obliterated me. I mentioned almost dying to the Queen earlier. The reason it aggroed me was because someone across the map shot it. So maybe the robots are working as attendants, but from my experience, it's difficult to figure out where or when these robots suddenly become aggressive. Which takes us to extracting. Extracting inside Arc Raiders, fairly simple. You reach an elevator before its countdown timer reaches 0, you activate the lift, you wait about 30 seconds, then you hop inside the elevator, stand at the console, and descend back into Speranza. Now, a lot can happen in those 30 seconds. Enemy players can burst out of hiding, a patrolling Arc can attack. It is a bit nerve-wracking, but that's really just part of the extraction genre. In my time playing, there was one instance where I survived, but I didn't extract in time. The elevator was across the map, I was pinned down by a sentry turret in a Bastion. There was nothing I could do. Now, as the clock hit 0, a meteor flew across the sky, impacted, and then black screen. Now, I was running away, so maybe I needed to face the explosion to see the giant fireball light up the sky, but personally, I thought it was a bit anticlimactic. My surroundings weren't blown away in a nuclear shockwave. The air around me didn't shine like the sun, just an explosion, car alarm, and black screen. Now, I know most of you are probably thinking, Cross, who cares? You're supposed to extract. I know, it's just one of those things that I feel like, hey, spice it up a bit more. If you happen to still be in there after the extract time runs out, dude, make it nuclear, right? Getting killed by a rocket drone during the match shouldn't be more exciting than the black screen at the end of the match. Which takes us to sound design. Embark really has nailed the sound design here, guys. It's easy to tell when enemies are approaching and where from. Footsteps, breathing, and gunshots are super clear. The entire game has this like retro futuristic theme that is fully embraced by the audio as well. From the buttons you press to the background music that plays while you sort your inventory, it's a 10 out of 10 vibe. Overall, guys, I think Arc Raiders presents something interesting, unique, and even for my folks that aren't that crazy about extraction shooters, I think my PvE players might even find this game interesting, just for its AI combatants. Luke, who primarily just plays PvE inside of Destiny, absolutely fell in love with this game this past week, and pretty much played Arc Raiders every day over Marathon. The question is, does it got something here to stand, not only against Marathon, but other extraction shooters? With a 2025 release date, a $40 price point, sci-fi based game, but also an extraction shooter, there's a lot of comparisons you can make here to Marathon. Obviously, the games look vastly different. I would say the biggest thing here is whether or not the people are going to enjoy the gunplay, considering it is a third-person shooter, which was quite a surprise for me, considering that the Finals was a first-person shooter. Whatever reason, though, they took this approach, and after my time playing with it, I get it. Like, I really do understand why they made it a third-person shooter. It just feels right. Time will tell, guys. We will definitely be keeping an eye on this one. So far, I'm enjoying it, and I'm definitely interested to see where this thing goes from now until release. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.
welcome back, welcome back. Been a long time since I've been playing video games, but I'm back with a little video on Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders, a new game from Embark Studios, same guys who made the finals, and it's an extraction shooter. Now I've played this before in another earlier alpha, which was NDA'd at the time, with a couple of friends, and it was kind of fun, but it was kind of basic, and it didn't really give you a good idea what it's like. But now that they've released this tech test for version 2, the game is actually fully fleshed out. I mean, to me, I would say this game feels like it's already almost ready, you know, so basically a quick run through how it works. So like all extraction shooters, you've got your main hub here, you've got your challenges for the day, you've got quests and so on, you know. You got the traders. Every trader has different quests potentially. At the moment I'm working on, where am I now? I'm working on this one, I think I'm gonna, yeah, working on this one. Get 2 explosives from the damn area, so I'm gonna try and do that today. So missions are there. You also have a workshop, much like your like Tarkov, you know, the hideout, where you have your benches. You can basic benches. You can make ammo and meds and basic guns and stuff, and grenades and stuff, you know. Got the equipment bench. This is more for your augments and stuff. I'll explain that, and shields, I'll explain that in a minute. Weapon bench speaks for itself. You can make guns here. You can also make attachments, mags, muzzles, grips, etc. You can even make a purple shotgun, epic shotgun. As you can see, it's obviously got, I can actually make one of them right now. I'm not going to make one though, because you can probably hope to find one in the world. My character, got a skill tree system here. I'm basically putting all my points into stamina at the moment. There's a looter kind of track with things like mines, explosives, blah blah blah. Anyway, you get the idea. There's a lot going on behind the back. The battle pass too. The battle pass is just skins. 1 out of 44 claimed. So you basically unlock the battle pass, and then you can unlock these by claiming them with these coins here. You get creds, and you only get them by playing the game and getting battle pass points. So it's just like any battle pass, really, played out a bit different. Right, I'm gonna go play this game now. I can actually invite a friend to this game, so if any of you guys want a key, let me know. Friends, that is, not randos. Right, let's get a game. I'm going to fill squad in. It's a 3-player game. We are going to go into the dam because that's where I need to do my mission. And it's kind of the maps are really big in this game. Right, so my loadouts. So the first thing I need is a augment. And an augment here, you can see when I drop that in there, see all these extra back slots up here? So it gives me lots of backpack slots by putting that in there. But there's other augments as well, and qualities, green, blue, pink, and I'm guessing legendary as well. My gun, right, so going with this, that's actually the action. I don't want to go with the action rifle. I want to go with the SMG for my secondary. Actually, I've got much choice here, have I? I've got the shotgun as well, though. Pistol. Let's go with assault rifle. The assault rifle uses medium ammo, and the Stitcher uses light ammo. You can see that on the screen. I can't really see it on my mouse. So I've got a bit of light ammo here. Also, you've got a shield section. Drop it in here, gives you a light shield. Now, medium ammo. Okay, bandages and stuff. So, if you want to go with normal bandages, you can drop these in your quick slot. That's a Q button. You also have shields. That's slightly better bandage as well. These are keys. So these are my safe pocket. Because I have a medium shield on, I only get 2 slots. If I have a light shield on, I get 3 slots in my safe pocket, much like Tarkov. If you die, this stuff won't go out the raid. So if I want to take someone quite big in there that's worth a lot of money, I can do that. So we'll get to gameplay eventually, guys. Just chill. Right. So all these materials I can break down to make craft stuff. The game's very crafting dependent, you know. You'll see later on. I've got a shotgun silencer there. Oh, I've got 2 shotgun. Yeah, 2 shotgun attachments. I didn't realize I had those. Right, so medium ammo. So I can see I'm pretty low on ammo. So I might have to buy some. I also need to get some shields here. So I'm just getting used to all these. Here you go, shields there. Shield charger. No, it's not that one, is it? Is that one? Yeah, it's that one. I'm getting 5 shields, 3 bandages, and 1 normal bandage. I can make more. So if I want to craft some, I can go to the workshop and go into the basic bench. And I think what I'll do is I will actually craft some medium ammo. It's not too expensive. It uses metal parts and chemicals. I'll make some light as well. You get quite a lot of ammo in the game though. It's not too hard to get ammo. But I just want to make sure I've got enough in here to. Oops. Right. So. I've got my main gun, 100 bullets, 18 medium. That's not really enough ammo to be honest, but I'll pick some up. What's this here? Oh, that's the energy ammo. Right, so I think I'm pretty much ready to go in. I don't really think I've taken any keys or anything. I'm just going to go in. Done fill squad on. So let's just go in. So sorry for the big long-winded intro, but I just want to run through the basics of the game before we start. Also, if you got your character and go to change appearance, there's a whole bunch of cool skins you can get, which is quite fun. I chose the spaceman suit because I thought it was quite fun. I like this one as well, that's quite good. This one was quite cool too, with a weird hat. This one's quite cool with a maybe helmet. You see that in the trailer in one of the videos. It's a cowboy one. And these cost like 1,000 of this currency, Raider tokens. And obviously this is just a tech test you can see here, so it's just giving you, it gives you a, when you first get in you get, I think it gives you 2,000 of these to play around with, so you can buy a couple of skins. You don't get to keep them or anything obviously, but it means you can kind of look like you're a wee bit different while you're playing the beta, or alpha, we don't call it, tech test. Right, just usually takes about a minute or two to get in at the moment, because obviously there's not a million folk in here. If you go onto the Embark game, or the game page for this on Steam, you can actually request a key, or request an access. It only lasts till the 4th of May, so another couple of days. But if you go in there and request access, you've got a chance. Otherwise, I've got an invite a friend here, which I can use, which you only get once you've played 4 rounds of the game. So we'll get in the game, do 4 runs, and once you've done 4 runs, you get access to invite a friend. You can actually invite some people on your friends list in Steam, basically, which is quite cool. So once you've done 4 rounds, if your friends aren't in and you want to play with your friends, invite them right here, and you'll get in. Right, get into 142. I usually find it's between 1 minute and 2 minutes to get into the game. But once you launch, it's quite quick to actually play. Right, let's get into this. See what goes on here. Come on, son. This game, no one really knows for sure when it's coming out. There's talk of Christmas time, but no one knows for sure. And there's also conversation about the game possibly costing £40 UK money GBP, but no one really knows quite yet. I guess this test is a big thing. Now, obviously, a lot of you guys have probably seen people playing Marathon, the Bungie extraction shooter alpha that's been out and about recently. Very different take than this game. I would say that this game, these guys have cooked hard. Like, they've really nailed the game. It's ex-DICE devs that made this game, so you can kind of see a lot of DICE feeling to it. You know, here we go. Let's talk to these guys. Hi guys, you guys got mics? No mics, okay, good start, no mics.
There, by the control tower.
This is the map here. Maybe a quick look, it's a pretty big map. As you can see, that's us there. There's all these buildings, different loot, see abundant loot, decent loot. So each area has different loot respecting to, okay, so here's the enemy. Here's the enemy, let's see how we take care of these guys. You gotta shoot the wings, you don't want to shoot the body, you want to shoot the little wings. I've got a terrible gun, that's no problem. He's got it. Now those guys will drop stuff, there's going to be sort of parts that will fall out of there that you can pick up. Right, let's get loot, we need to loot, let's go check this building here. So the map is big, but I mean I've already started to get a feel for it. I've done about, I don't know, I think I've done like 7 or 8 rounds so far, something like that. Right, loot will just be found randomly in the world. It is very random, you don't always get loot, you know. And it is, it's not instance, so double click to collect as well. Basically, if I search the docks, there's only that loot in there. You don't share loot in this game, so you've got to try and be cool with each other, try and communicate. You guys not got mics, no?
Yes, I have.
Oh, hi mate, how you doing?
Good.
There we go, got a mic. Avoid these robots for now. I know they chase you and stuff, but there's bigger robots to fight too. It's like any extraction game. If I start like shooting lots of robots and making lots of noise, then obviously, you know, hey, people are going to know I'm here. So I'm going to go upstairs to the roof here, to the higher levels in this building, because this building's actually got decent loot. See how dark it is in there? See how hard it is to see in there? Oh yeah, here's one of the big drones. See the big drone out there? big boy. He's much harder to deal with. You don't want to fuck with him actually.
What did you?
I don't know why my audio is coming out of my speakers here. Or his from in-game audio. So he's locked up now. Okay, right, let's start looting. This is one of the sort of main loot areas, so you just want to search everywhere, get yourself some goodies. Whatever that green stuff. Oh, I got a stable stock recipe. I got a legendary stock recipe I can use for crafting later. That's actually really cool. You can also salvage stuff, so if you see something you want like that and you want to like break the stuff down rather than filling your inventory. Oh shit, the players. Oh no, there's a player came in and shot me. No. Oh no, I didn't even see the guy. He just keep on another guy here. Oh no, I didn't even see them. No. Oh, this guy's throwing the poison gas and shit down. I'm going down here. See if he's help me or not. Oh, I'm going to die to the gas. This is not good. Okay, bad start. This might be a fast raid. That's good, we can jump straight back in again. Oh, these guys are okay. Help. I'm on the stairs.
Yeah.
There's somebody coming up the stairs. Glitch. There's another guy, another team coming up the stairs. Another team coming up. There's another team coming up the stairs, watch out. Oh shit, are we all down?
I see. The fighter come to me. But I think he saw me. I will close the door.
Oh shit, can we get saved here? Oh shit, son. Nice! Right, quick revive, quick. Oh my god, we might survive here.
Don't move.
Sorry. Shit. Oh my god.
One is coming from the stairs.
I gotta back off. I'll back off and heal here. So I get players quickly. Get a bit of distance between me and them. Oh shit, there's a robot there.
Okay, one is
robots. Oh shit, not good. Oh no! I let a stupid bloody... Does that knock me down or just knock me over? Oh, it's just a bot gun. Just a bot gun got me. Give me again. Pick me up again, please. Sorry, I ran at a turret. Oh my god, this is a fucking comedy of errors right here. Can I loot while I'm down?
I got me.
Recently we did a video you all loved where we converted up 40k versions of loyal Space Marines that are actually Chaos chapters. You know, what would happen if they never sided with Horus and then 10,000 years later were still fighting for the Emperor? Well, a lot of people in the comments wanted us to do the opposite, so today that's what we're doing. No, this isn't your alternate heresy, this is Warhammer 40k. And today, Murray and I are going to be imagining a couple of the loyal chapters of the Emperor as if they were Chaos Space Marines. It's tabletop time.
So with all the 9 legions of the loyalists available to me, I decided to go for the Iron Hands because they don't get much else. They are somewhat neglected and I think could have a lot of flesh. See what I did there? The flesh is weak. I had a little bit of a look at the Daunian Heresy, and basically they get really obsessed with Necron tech and literally start stealing Necron tech. They adopted Gorse technology. All their leaders are entirely mechanical, completely uploaded basically. But to support this, they need to be put into Terminator armor. And that gave me an idea because this is the new Primaris Chaplain and Terminator armor. Chaplains in Terminator armor used to be the coolest models you could get in 40k. And I'm gonna be honest, I've always thought he was a bit bland. There's just not much happening here. So it's my plan to see if I can change that today. Let's begin. So my plan for this Terminator here is to do a couple of very simple but effective hand swaps here. The fan art I've seen of the Iron Hands in the Daunian Heresy is a lot of additions. They really remind me of Mega Man, just a big cannon instead of one hand. I really like it actually. So I'm gonna do a big cannon, a big Gorse Blaster on one arm, and then a Necron Lord's phasing blade on the other hand. That will be really nice. I just have to make sure that the hands fit. And then of course I'm going to clad the Terminator